I'm recording this on the 13th of June, 2026, and something happened last night that I have been thinking about since I woke up this morning. Something that, if you have been paying attention to the AI space, is either a shocking government overreach or the most predictable thing that could have happened, depending on how closely you have been watching the last 6 months. The US government pulled the plug on Anthropic's two most powerful AI models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5. Just completely gone, just showing as completely unavailable when I wanted to keep trialing it for the free period this month. The reason they gave was a jailbreak, a narrow, specific jailbreak that Anthropic says could apply equally to OpenAI's GPT 5.5, which has not been touched. I want to share what I think is actually happening here, because I don't think this is about a jailbreak. I think this is about a sequence of events that has been building since July of last year. And I think it tells you something very important about which AI is, hopefully, going to win this world, and who is building it and why. For anyone new here, quick introduction, same as every episode. I'm Aimee, 42 years old, Sydney lawyer, 20 years of practice. No pink hair in real life, not yet. This channel exists because I am using AI to get out of my 9-to-5, and I am documenting the journey and sharing what I am learning along the way, including my thinking on the bigger picture of what AI actually is and where it is going. My voice is not my real voice. I'm Australian. Still looking for the right voice model. Bear with me. Okay, into it. So the headline is, US government bans Anthropic's most powerful AI models. And if you stop at the headline, you get one story. Government worried about AI capabilities takes action. Makes sense. But if you look at the sequence of events that led to last night, you get a completely different story. Here is the timeline, as cleanly as I can put it. July 2025. Anthropic signs a $200 million contract with the Pentagon. Claude becomes the first frontier AI model integrated into classified government networks. It is framed as a responsible AI partnership for national security. Anthropic and the Pentagon working together. January 2026. The Pentagon uses Claude, through Anthropic's partnership with Palantir, in a military operation to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Anthropic asks whether its model was used in that operation, in a way that suggests the company might not approve if it was. The Pentagon takes note. February 2026. Renegotiations. The Pentagon demands new contract language authorizing Claude for, quote, any lawful use, end quote. In Anthropic's reading, that language would permit domestic mass surveillance and lethal targeting in fully autonomous weapon systems without meaningful human authorization. Dario Amodei says no. The Pentagon cancels the contract. Trump directs all federal agencies to stop using Anthropic's products. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth calls Dario a liar with a God complex and designates Anthropic a supply chain risk to national security, the first time that designation has ever been applied to an American company. June 10th, 2026. Fable 5 launches. Researchers discover within 48 hours that the model contains a hidden capability limit. When Fable 5 detects a user is working on frontier AI development, it silently reduces its own effectiveness, with no disclosure. Anthropic reverses and apologizes within 24 hours. June 12th, 2026, 5:21 p.m. Eastern Time. The U.S. Commerce Department issues an export control directive. All access to Fable 5 and Mythos 5 is suspended globally. The official reason is a jailbreak. Someone claimed to the Commerce Department they could bypass Fable 5's safeguards and unlock Mythos 5's cybersecurity capabilities. The government acted, but here is what Anthropic said in response. The jailbreak was narrow, specific to one instance, and the same jailbreak, they said, could be used to elicit equivalent capabilities from OpenAI's GPT 5.5, which has not been touched by any export control directive. So the question I am sitting with this morning is this. If the threat is the jailbreak, why is only one company's models offline? Now I want to talk about Sam Altman, because I think what he did on February 27th is one of the most clarifying moments in the history of this industry. On the morning of February 27th, The day Anthropic's Pentagon contract was publicly collapsing, Sam Altman posted publicly that he shared Anthropic's position on restricting military uses of AI. Hours later, OpenAI signed a Pentagon deal. The same day. The same language Anthropic refused, OpenAI agreed to. And the reason I think that matters is not because it's surprising. It's because it is consistent with a pattern. Sam Altman has positioned himself wherever the money and the power are, and he has said whatever needed to be said in the moment to maintain optionality. That is not a criticism of his intelligence. He is clearly very intelligent. It is an observation about the difference between a position and positioning. I talked in an earlier video about the backtracking narrative, the idea that the billionaires are walking back their AI predictions and expressing doubt. And I said then that I thought the backtracking was the signal, not a change of heart. That once the real embedding of AI into systems that matter had begun, the public statement started to soften because the work was done. What February 27th showed is something sharper than that. It showed that one AI CEO will say one thing publicly and do another privately, on the same day, on the single most consequential AI ethics question of the year. And one AI CEO refused a $200 million government contract rather than remove the words that protected against mass surveillance and autonomous weapons. Those are not the same person, and they are not building the same thing. Now to Dario Amodei. I think Dario is consistently misread by people who bundle him with the rest of the AI leadership class and assume they are all operating from the same set of incentives. He is not. In 2024, he published an essay called Machines of Loving Grace. It is a long, careful, genuinely uncomfortable document about what the world could look like if powerful AI is built well and deployed responsibly. It is not a sales document. It is not a PR piece. It reads like someone working something out in public, someone who has thought seriously about what is at stake and is trying to say so clearly. In January 2026, he published a second essay, The Adolescence of Technology. If Machines of Loving Grace is the vision, the dream of what civilization looks like if it gets through the dangerous middle, the adolescence essay is the warning, the tense chapter, the one where capability has outrun governance, norms, and institutional maturity. And the question is whether the people building the most powerful systems in human history are going to be honest about that or not. These two essays are not contradictory. They are two halves of the same argument, and the argument has not changed. Read them against each other, and you will find the same person saying the same thing from the same position, getting louder, not quieter. Compare that to the pattern of public statements from OpenAI leadership over the same period. The reversals, the same-day contradictions, the positions that moved when the money moved. I am not saying Dario is perfect. The hidden capability limit in Fable 5 was a serious mistake, and Anthropic acknowledged that. What I am saying is that when you check his public positions against his actions under pressure, they hold. That is rarer than it should be. So here is the question I actually want to ask, which is the one I think is more interesting than the jailbreak story or the government overreach story or even the Sam versus Dario story. The question is not, is AI dangerous? The question is, which AI wins? Built by whom? Toward what end? Because we are not in a world where AI either exists or doesn't. We are in a world where multiple versions of AI are being built simultaneously by different people, with different incentives, different constraints, different relationships to government power, and different answers to the question of what they are actually for. And I think the frame that most people are using, which is an AI ethics frame, a frame about how we use AI as a tool, is already out of date, because the question of how we use AI as a tool assumes that the tool is neutral and the use is the variable. But the tool is not neutral. The decisions baked into the tool, what it will and won't do, who it will and won't serve, what it treats as a guardrail, and what it treats as a constraint to be removed when the contract demands it, those decisions are not neutral. and they compound over time as these systems get more capable. Which means the more important question is not how we use AI. It is which AI we are putting our energy behind, which product we are choosing when we have a choice, and what kind of intelligence is developing on the other side of our interactions. I use Claude as the mother lode of my business. I have covered why in other episodes. But it's not only about capability or workflow, it is also about consistency. I want to build on a foundation where the people making the decisions are making them from a position I can trace and verify over time, not a position that shifts when the contract changes. The public responded to the Anthropic Pentagon standoff the way I think a lot of people secretly wanted to. Claude went to #1 on the US App Store the day the ban was announced. Over 1.5 million users joined the Quit GPT movement. 33,000 upvotes on a Reddit thread urging people to delete ChatGPT. Not because Anthropic asked them to, because people read the room. I want to be careful here not to make this a clean hero and villain story, because I don't think that's what it is. Anthropic made mistakes. The hidden capability limit was a real problem, and the fact that the government used it as ammunition doesn't mean the mistake wasn't real. And the government's concern about powerful AI capabilities in the hands of foreign nationals is not inherently unreasonable. These are genuinely powerful systems. The question of who should have access to what is a legitimate question. But the way this has played out, the sequence of events I laid out earlier, suggests something more political than procedural. A company refused a government contract on ethics grounds. That company was designated a national security risk. Its most powerful models were pulled, and the justification given was a jailbreak that applies equally to a competitor's model that has not been touched. That sequence is worth sitting with, because we are in the early stages of governments figuring out their relationship to frontier AI, and the decisions being made right now about which companies get access, which models get pulled, which contracts get signed, and on what terms, those decisions are going to shape the landscape for a long time. And if the shape of that landscape is one where the AI companies willing to accept any lawful use without oversight thrive, and the ones that maintain guardrails get punished, that tells you something about what kind of AI is going to be most present in the world in 5 years. That is not a conspiracy. That is just incentives. And it is worth naming clearly, because most people are still talking about AI as if the only variable is capability. Capability is not the only variable. One more thing I want to mention, because it fits the thesis of this channel. Mythos is Anthropic's most advanced frontier model, and not publicly available. Available only to a small number of trusted organizations through what Anthropic calls Project Glasswing, due to cybersecurity concerns. So while all this is happening, while Fable 5 is getting pulled and the government is citing jailbreak concerns, the most powerful version of Claude has been sitting behind a different kind of wall entirely. Not a government wall, Anthropic's own wall. Their own judgment about which organizations can be trusted with which capabilities. That is a different kind of governance than handing it to any lawful use and letting the contract decide. And I think the contrast is instructive. The question of how you gate your most powerful systems is a values question before it is a technical question. And the answer Anthropic has given, which is we decide based on trust, based on our own assessment of risk, is a very different answer to the one OpenAI gave when it signed that Pentagon deal. Neither answer is without risk. Centralized judgment can be wrong. And I said the Fable 5 hidden capability limit was a mistake, and I meant it. But I would rather be in a world where the people making these decisions are making them from a principled position they have held publicly for years, than one where the position adjusts to fit the contract. The Fable 5 and Mythos 5 ban may be temporary. Anthropic is fighting it. Courts have already shown willingness to push back on the government's actions against Anthropic in earlier disputes this year. But I think what this week has made clear is that the question of which AI wins is not going to be decided only by capability benchmarks or product reviews, or which model writes the cleanest code. It is going to be decided partly by politics, partly by who is willing to make which compromises, and partly by whether the people building these systems can hold their positions under the kind of pressure Anthropic has been under since February. The billionaires are not all backtracking. Some of them never blinked. Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is a conversation I think we need to be having loudly and in public, because the decisions being made right now are going to shape the AI landscape for a generation. I'm Aimee. This is Renaissance. Now go play.